for the call. Can I go to page 174, Ministerial Office Resources? Can the Minister identify how many staff have been seconded into the Ministerial Office from the Education Department or from, indeed, other departments or ministerial offices?
I believe the answer is none.
Can the Minister provide how many public servants are in the ministerial offices, the ministerial office, as opposed to the separately appointed political appointments?
I have to take that on notice, I think.
Thank you, sir. Are you able to provide the figure for each of the last 4 financial years?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Happy to go to the next page on the workforce summary. Fairly substantial change from the 23-24 actual figures in Department for Education and the estimated result 24-25 and then pretty much stable for the budget. Is the Minister able to identify the reason for that change? Is it just a purely reflection, an estimated staff based on budget changes, or is there a difference in headcount effectively?
I might pass to Mr Bernardi to answer that one.
Hi. Yes, part of the a key reason for the difference is that there are vacancies that we have in the 2023-24 financial year. I'll take more of the detail on notice through the Minister. However, one of the reasons is as a result of there being staff vacancies, and we have a policy that where there are staff vacancies, we reinvest that money into priority areas, for example, maintenance. But for the specific details, I'll come back on notice.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, if I may, I might just add that too, add to that in terms of some of the things that we have, the programs that we have funded. An increase in staff FTE estimates relating to the operational cost of 3-year-old preschool delivery. There is an increase in staff FTE associated with the 5 new technical colleges. There is a FTE component, I believe, as well for the tailored learning program, the new iteration of Flow. I think as well in the disability space. So in addition to the answer given by Mr Bernardi, there are also obviously some programs that we have commenced or that are ongoing that also contribute to those FTE numbers.
Thank you. Very similar question, which I could wait till administered items, but seeing as we're right here, there's a similar change in the number of, in the headcount on administered items. Is that able to be explained? 38 to 50 on that line.
We'll take that on notice, Member for Morialta.
Thank you. While we're talking about vacancies, is the Minister able to advise how many staff vacancies the department currently has, and if possible, whether it can be grouped into categories, like administrative, teaching and so forth?
Member for Morialta, are you referring to teaching position vacancies or vacancies outside of that?
I was actually interested in both,
Right, okay.
but I am specifically interested in teaching, and I was going to go into that in my next question, so
Sure.
feel free to provide me with what you'd like. You might save us some time.
Indeed. So at the beginning of the 2025 school year, there were 57 positions that were unfilled, that's teaching positions. This compares to 68 the year before, 71 the year before that, and 86 the year before that. So although there are still vacancies that we would ideally like to be filled, the pleasing news is that number has gone down year on year. And I think if we were to compare how South Australia is faring compared to other states and territories, we are in a much better position, even when taking into account population. Obviously, the majority of the vacant roles that weren't filled were in country areas, which has traditionally been harder to staff, but we have done quite a lot there, and I'd probably point to particularly the work we did in the last enterprise bargaining agreement around the return of the country incentive zone allowance, bringing it back for or make it ongoing for staff who were currently receiving it, but also bringing it back for those staff who had lost it some time ago. So hopefully those things, I think, are starting to contribute to that position of vacancies dropping year on year.
Can I ask how many staff vacancies are being carried in non-teaching roles? And I'm wondering if that can be done, non-teaching roles within schools and non-teaching roles within the department outside of schools.
Yeah, I'll have to take that one on notice, Member for Morialta.
Thank you. How many special authorities to teach have been granted to staff working in those schools at the beginning of each of the years that the Minister identified? We had 57 vacancies at the beginning of this year, 68 the year before, 71 the year before, and 86 the year before that. Just wondering if we can have the number of special authorities to teach granted to staff in each of those years.
We've got Marina Elliott here, who is the Executive Director of People and Culture, who might be able to help us answer this question.
Thank you. We currently have 145 special authority teachers teaching in our public education schools. Those 145 teachers are on contracts, and they're predominantly teachers who are in their final year of their initial teacher education program. And the vast majority of those 145 are in our hard-to-staff locations.
That was the number as of today?
As of 6th of June, I believe.
6th June. Is it possible, if not now, then potentially on notice, to get the equivalent numbers on the first day of school for each of the last 4 years up to this year?
So I can do that. I don't have that with me, but we can get that on notice. That number is from the 6th of June, so you're asking for the beginning of the school year?
Yeah, the beginning of the school year, so it's equivalent with the number of vacancies at the beginning of the year.
say though, Member for Morialta, in terms of the 6th of June figures for the last couple of years, so 2025, as Ms Elliott said, 145, 2024, 6th of June, 198, 2023, 6th of June, 159, so down on the last 2 years this year.
And be grateful for 2022 and 2021 in due course, whether the 6th of June figure is to complete this set, or alternatively the beginning of the school year, as with all 5 figures.
We can do that, and of course point out too that it's not only the public system that is using special authorities to teach, that global figure that has been, I think, used in the public domain includes all those SATs across the 3 schooling sectors in South Australia, but these are the numbers specific to the public system.
My recollection is that up until probably 2023, or it might have been 22, or it might have been earlier, but in smaller numbers, special authorities to teach were usually reserved for people with specialist skills, but not necessarily teaching qualifications or even teaching students, people like Arabic teachers or other special abilities. The 145 special authorities to teach currently employed in our public education system, are all of those teaching students in final or second to last year of their degrees, or are any of those in the specialist category? I imagine there are some that are Teach for Australia as well.
Yes, you are correct that some are in the what you might refer to as a specialist category, but I might take on notice and come back to you about how many fall into that category. I think there was also a special category during COVID as well, from memory.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're bringing back some retired teachers from memory.
Yes.
The other question I had was in relation to vacancies in non-teaching positions. Did we take that one on notice already?
Yes, take that on notice.
Thank you. Can I ask how many of those FTEs are in the technical colleges program? The Minister identified that as one of the reasons for the increase in the last financial year. How many are in the technical colleges program?
I can provide somewhat of an answer for you here, Member for Morialta. Because Findon is the only one that is open yet, I'm advised there are 20 FTE there, but we have appointed the leads for the other 4 technical colleges. So I think it's in the vicinity of 25 or 26, I think, currently, but obviously that number will grow as the other colleges open.
Thank you. We've identified 6th of June figures for the special authorities to teach. I think the Minister quoted beginning of term 1 figures earlier for vacancies. Do you have current or 6th of June figures for vacancies, or beginning of term 2?
We don't have the exact numbers, so I can take it on notice, but we believe it's pretty similar to the figures at the start of the year, but can come back to you.
Thank you. I believe Ms Elliott, in response to the earlier question about the pre-service teachers with special authorities to teach, suggested most of them were in the hard-to-staff schools, presumably in more rural or remote areas. Is there a capacity to identify the numbers per region in relation to how many of those SATs were in each region within the department?
I'm sure we can take that away and get that data for you. We don't have it on us today.
Thank you. Is there a program to support those pre-service teachers in their roles? I mean, one of the concerns that we often have is in relation to burnout of teachers who have had their full qualification. These teachers in remote areas, presumably many of them far from home, I'm sure that we would be very concerned about whether they would have negative or a positive experience. Can the Minister explain what support is being provided to make sure they have a positive experience and are going to be with us for many years to come?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the question and a good opportunity to talk about perhaps what some of the upsides of having special authorities to teach are. Although, you know, of course, in an ideal situation, we don't have any unfilled vacancies, and I'm not suggesting otherwise, but we have been tracking this very, very closely around how our SATs have been going, and the department has provided a lot of wraparound support, and that has included mentoring, release time at 0.1 of an FTE for lesson planning and professional development, flexibility for completing their studies. Some work is also underway to design employment-based ITE courses that embed SAT employment as part of supported and effective preparation for teaching as a graduate. What we have seen, I think I can say anecdotally so far, is that given nationally the attrition rate we are looking at for teachers in the first 5 years of teaching is something like 50%, which is astronomically high. We are seeing success in terms of those coming through as an SAT and spending obviously more time earlier in the classroom and having more of this individual wraparound mentoring support than we have done in the past, that they are doing, we have seen well once they finish their final year of studies and go into the classroom as a fully qualified teacher. So although I'm not suggesting that SAT is preferable to having all our vacancies filled, I think there is something to be said about a model where those still studying spend more time in the classroom with professional development and support around them, because I think the feedback certainly that I hear all the time, and the feedback is the same across all states and territories, and this is what contributes to that 50% attrition rate, is that when they get into the classroom they're just not prepared for it, and it's overwhelming, and it leads to them quitting and not coming back. So I think there is a case to be made that some more exposure to the classroom in the way that the SATs are getting it, where there is a lot of mentoring and support to make sure they are given every opportunity to succeed, I think does really have merit and is proving beneficial.
Thank you. In relation, one of the categories that have special authorities to teach are the Teach for Australia students, I assume. Is the department still progressing with Teach for Australia in a program? And if so, what is the nature of the current program? How many, I think they're called associates, are we talking about?
Yes, so Teach for Australia is still a part of our system and has been since 2019. In terms of actual numbers, though, I'm pretty sure that we haven't seen a great deal of growth in terms of the use of Teach for Australia. The 5th cohort of master's students commenced in 2025. 18 have completed the program since appointment started in 2021. The retention of graduates is at 77%. So there is a place for it, I think, in those hard-to-staff locations, but I don't think we have seen the kind of growth in the use of Teach for Australia that other jurisdictions have, particularly Victoria, where the numbers are very, very high. That's not to say that we're not open to using it, where I think we have shown that we're willing to do some innovative things to try to make sure we've got teachers standing in front of our students. But I would say that at this stage, the numbers that we are seeing through Teach for Australia are just pretty consistent at a level they've been for a number of years.
Still in the same budget line, sir, is the Minister able to identify how many schools in South Australia are currently seeking to recruit a principal or have an acting principal and will soon be going through the recruitment process?
I am advised that all our principal positions are filled currently, but I'll have to take on notice the second part of your question around how many we have in acting positions, but all principal positions are filled, I'm advised.
Okay, so there's no... Yes, I understand that. That makes sense. In addition to that, can I ask how many principals are in the last year of their appointment? And I guess automatically that assumes that they haven't at this stage had confirmation they've been rolled over, because otherwise they wouldn't be in the last year of their appointment. So how many are currently in the last year of their appointment?
Thank you, Member for Morialta. So yes, opportunity here for me to, of course, mention the recent changes that originally came about through the enterprise bargaining negotiations, where we put on the table the proposition of extending the tenure of principals to 10 years, which has now been agreed after a pretty thorough piece of work between the department and the principal associations and the union, and we have agreement now where as those tenures come up, as they are rolled over into 10-year tenures instead of 5. I think that's an important change for us to make, given we know that it's not just hard finding teachers at the moment, it's hard finding leaders as well, and I thought that the timing was right for us to have that conversation, and we went through a pretty thorough consultation process with the Secondary Principals Association, the Primary Principals Association, about how they thought it should work, and this is the model that we landed on. But I might just pass to Marina, who can give you a bit of detail specifically around your question around how many are sitting in that period to roll over.
So there are approximately 160 Band A leaders who are in their final year of their tenure, who are going through a process currently of tenure renewal under the 10-year tenure.
Okay. What does that process entail?
So the process entails the education directors working closely with our principals and having a conversation about their intention to stay in the position that they're in. If the principal is keen to continue and there are no performance concerns, then the principal is renewed for a further 10 years under the new policy position.
Who determines whether or not there are performance concerns? Is that a matter for the education director?
So the determination of performance concerns occurs through a process that is outlined in our guidelines across the department. So that conversation occurs between an individual and their line manager, and there are rigorous requirements to adhere to go through a performance process.
How many principals are therefore now on 10-year contracts?
The 10-year contract won't come into effect for leaders until term 3. Term 3 will be the first period of time where principals will be under a 10-year tenure. There are a small number who will come into play for the beginning of term 3. The majority of those, approximately 160, will begin at the beginning of 2026.
So if I can get this just clear in my head, so for the target for this year then is for those principals who are in the last year of their contract, that 160 or so, for that cohort to, by the beginning of next year, be on 10-year contracts, 10-year tenures, and then for the rest of the principal cohort, the other 340 or so, those positions will become 10-year contracts whenever they come up naturally as a result of the end of the previous tenures.
Yes, that is correct, and that was the arrangement that we came to, or the agreement that we came to with the Principals Associations. That was the model that they preferred and the model that we went with.
Thank you.
How's the government supporting more children with disabilities to access special options in our public schools? Oh, sorry, and that's budget paper 4, volume 1, page 187.
Thank you, Member for Elder, for that question. And yes, this of course is a very important issue for all education systems, but one that we have made a concerted effort to make a priority of this government. Supporting children with disabilities is obviously critically important for any government. Recently we announced a commitment of $3.5 million over 4 years to establish new special options, and that is both specialist classes and disability units. This will better meet student demand and ensure all South Australians can enrol in their local school. I think you would know as a local member, as would all members of this place, that one of the challenges that we have had in the system for many, many years is around being able to provide special options places close to where the family and the child with disability lives. And I think we haven't always got it right in terms of the speed with which we can find a placement and give that family certainty that their child will have an appropriate special options place at a school which is convenient to them. And the number of students in special classes has been steadily increasing, but previously we saw no specific budget existed to support medium or long-term planning for the infrastructure needed for a school to be able to provide a special class, and that might be things like buildings, toilets or other works that are necessary to accommodate that. Areas such as Northern Adelaide have experienced significant population growth over a number of years. We know that because we are building new schools. I know, Chair, you know that all too well. And we have seen demand outstrip the available places. And of course that can be a traumatic thing for families to go through as they are struggling to get certainty about where their child will go. And often we see that acutely in the transition period between a primary school and a high school. The $3.5 million per year that we announced this year will assist the department to assess future expected enrolments and work with sites to plan for infrastructure where it is most needed. 52 new special options have been created since July 2022 to meet demand, but the focus now needs to be on strategic planning to cater for future needs. I also want to point out a couple of specific examples, Member for Elder, that have come about through country cabinet processes that we have had. The first was in Naracoorte, where it was actually a staff member of one of our schools there, stood up in front of the audience and asked a question of me around why there were no special options places available in Naracoorte, and we got a similar question when we had our country cabinet in Victor Harbor, and I can say that in both those cases now we have been able to offer special options basically for the first time in Naracoorte and Victor Harbor. There is still a lot more to do, but I think those things, combined with the fact that we made a very big change to the Inclusive Education Support Program or Plan, the IESP funding, the 1 to 9 steps, where we removed the application process that schools needed to make to access the first 3 of those 9 steps, and put an extra, I think, $50 million in to do it, to try to make it possible for schools to provide that extra support to a child with disability rather than having to go through what could sometimes be a pretty onerous application process to head office. So not for a second suggesting that all the work is done, but there is a lot of things we've done in the 3 and a bit years to try to offer more places and be able to offer those places faster for families.
go back to the member from Marlton. I'll give you 3 questions and the member for Cavell.
Thank you. How many there's the same budget line I was on before. How many teachers exercised their right of return after teaching in the country for the required period of time last year?
We'll take that on notice, member from Morialton.
If you're taking it on notice, can I ask for each of the last 5 years, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Does the department have a target or an anticipated number of how many will exercise that right this year and next year and so on?
I'm not aware of a target, no.
What are the subject specialties with the highest vacancy rate or roles not filled or however you want to characterise it in country schools? If it makes it easier, I'm happy to take in all schools. I assume most of them will be country schools.
So we might take the detail on notice, although just talking to Mr Westwell then, I think anecdotally we can say that design and tech has been an issue for a number of years and would remain an issue, and probably some of the STEM subjects as well. And I think one of the commitments that we made was a commitment of about, or just short of $7 million for specialist teacher workforce, a specialist teacher workforce plan between 2023-24 and 2027-2028, and that commitment was to create a workforce plan that places teachers in subjects they are qualified to teach and creates incentives for teachers to gain qualifications in specialist subjects. And that includes incentives as highly accomplished and lead teachers, which would, of course, as you know, member for Morialton, would mean a higher salary, investment in retraining, support to get more specialists working in schools, and some of that has been done in Teach for Australia. Increase the number of specialist teachers in maths, English, languages, the arts, science and design and technology. So although this has been a long-standing issue, and as you rightly pointed out in your question, it's often felt far more acutely in regional areas of South Australia. We have put some serious dollars behind trying to address it and trying to incentivise teachers to take up a specialisation, but particularly a specialisation in the areas where we most need it.
Is the Minister able to identify how many unsuccessfully advertised places there have been for teachers where the school has advertised for the position for 3 years in a row or more?
While we get you that bit of information, perhaps I could regale you with a story of, or a success story of where we have managed to get a specialist teacher. A Valley View Secondary School had struggled to fill their food technology vacancy through the traditional recruitment process since 2022, so quite some time. As a new strategy, the school sought interest from permanent and contract teachers for retraining within this subject area. There's one teacher who had a background in English and HASS, showed interest. The school, in consultation with the department, were able to identify an experienced food technologies mentor to facilitate retraining for the teacher. The mentor was employed to support the teacher in the classroom 2 days per week for 1 term, as well as assisting with curriculum planning during non-instructional time. The teacher also attended the Orbis Design and Technology Training Program with a focus on food. This support successfully enhanced the teacher's skills and confidence in a new area. And as a result of that, the retrained teacher has been appointed to a contract for 2025 to teach food technologies and has become a valuable addition to the faculty. I'm told we'll endeavour to get the data you're after, but it's not particularly easy to, or not necessarily particularly easy to get that, but we will try.
Can the Minister outline what percentage of the department's teaching workforce currently hold permanency? And Chair, I've got about 2 supplementaries that are likely on this one, and then another
We'll see how we go.
topic after that, if you wanted to look for a natural break.
Yes, okay.
Yes, so as you no doubt know, Member for Morialta, we made a commitment around increasing teacher permanency, and I can tell you that over 1,800 teachers on temporary contracts have been converted to permanency since the election, including a focus on preschool teachers and younger teachers to support job security. This one was of particular importance to me because I had been quite taken aback by the number of parents and sometimes grandparents who would come up to me at street corner meetings or events and talk about the fact that they had a son or daughter or granddaughter or grandson who was new to teaching and hadn't yet been made permanent, but there were being overtures made by perhaps other schools or other sectors, and why would the public education system not do everything in its power to make sure that we could keep this young teacher on an ongoing basis. So as the number of permanent teachers in 2022 was 12,184, the number of teachers converted to permanency since the election has exceeded the 10% of this figure. I think, if I've got it here somewhere, what I wanted to particularly point out was the number of conversions that we had made for early childhood teachers or preschool teachers. Here it is, conversions actioned for the 2025 school year in terms of conversions for preschool teachers were greater than the total converted in the 10 years prior, which I think is some fantastic work by Marina and her team to really, not just focus on conversions to permanency for primary and secondary staff, but also to focus on conversions for preschool staff as well.
Well, you're trying to double the size of our preschool workforce, so I would have thought that was obvious. But the Minister identified the election commitment. I quote from the Minister's election commitment in their schools policy was that the government would increase the percentage of permanent teachers by at least 10%. I seek from the Minister the percentage of permanency within the teaching workforce in 2022, the election of the government, and the percentage of permanency among the teaching workforce today or this year.
Yeah, I can repeat the answer that I've given Member for Morialta, which is...
That didn't answer the question I've just asked.
That's fine, and we can take that on notice if you want, but I will just repeat it nonetheless. As the number of permanent teachers in 2022 was 12,184.
And what percentage was that as a proportion of the teaching workforce?
We will take that on notice and come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Member for Cavell, you have a couple of questions?
Thank you, Mr Chair. If I can take the committee to budget paper for volume 1 at 177, the investing expenditure summary. Can the Minister provide an update on the program to deliver a new preschool and primary school in Mount Barker in terms of this year's allocation, and any comments he might have on the project overall.
Yes, Member for Carville, thank you very much. I want to say from the outset, thank you for your fantastic advocacy on this over a long period of time. And one of the first bits of work that we did upon coming to government was to look at those areas of growth, and of course 2 areas very much stood out in terms of where we were seeing the biggest population growth and the greatest need, and they were the northern suburbs of Adelaide and of course Mount Barker. And I think it kind of goes without saying that we have successive governments have left it too late to build that infrastructure, particularly in Mount Barker, and that has caused issues in terms of families in that area being able to find good public schooling options. Well, we announced, and I should point out that the process we went through was a pretty rigorous process. Deloitte was engaged to deliver the business case identifying primary schooling, secondary schooling and/or special options education, and that was completed in late 2023. The recommendations of both business cases were considered by the government. We then funded 61.1 million in the previous budget for a new preschool and an R6 school. That's a 100-place preschool and a 350-place primary school. Funding in the last financial year is for land purchase. The land negotiations are progressing well, I am told, and we are working very closely with Renewal and the Mount Barker Council. I want to point out and actually acknowledge the work of the Mount Barker Council as well as you, Member for Carville, in terms of working with us really constructively here to try to not just make sure that we get a new primary school and preschool actually built, but trying to put it in a location which best serves the community, which is something that we have not always done particularly well. I can tell you that they are due to open in 2028. So thank you again for your advocacy, and looking forward to having more positive news once we've got the land purchase and other things all sorted.
Thank you, Minister. Very much. Our community very much appreciates that investment. Can the Minister, on the same budget line, provide an update in relation to the refurbishment of Oakbank School?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Member for Carville. So I think one of the things that we've tried to make a priority since being in government is what we have referred to as every school a great school. And I think a trap that all previous governments have probably fallen into, to be perfectly honest, is to sometimes take what is the easier option and to just continue to expand and grow existing schools that are incredibly popular, that have waiting lists, instead of doing the work to actually uplift those schools which haven't been schools of first choice for the local communities and have latent capacity. And I think it's created a system, and I don't have the figures to hand, but there is some pretty incredible data that shows the number of students at both primary school level and high school level in South Australia who actually go to their zoned school. Off the top of my head, it's something like 22% in one of those categories and 36% in the other category, which shows that not only are a lot of South Australian families not choosing their local school, but of course it means they are often travelling across the metropolitan area or elsewhere to get access to a school that they feel comfortable to use. So what we have done is targeted uplift. One of those schools that was targeted for uplift was Oakbank, which of course had vacant enrolment capacity. In fact, the capacity is currently 562, enrolments are at 350, so there's 200 odd places that are not being used. So the $15.9 million that we put in the 2024-2025 budget is designed to give that school, an infrastructure refresh. We were both there recently for the opening of their new ICT lab, which was very, very impressive. And I think I commented at that opening that I think the kind of secret formula at schools that have perhaps had long-term available enrolment capacity that hasn't been met has been often new leadership, investment from the state government for some new infrastructure, and a specialisation. There's a few schools like that I could point to that stand out. I think Plympton International is one, the Heights School is one, Valley View is probably one, and I think Oakbank now will be one of those as well. We're going to have concept designs due in November. I'll be very keen to sit down with you and show you what they look like. But I think it's an exciting time for the school because it is one of those schools that I think hasn't had the kind of investment it needed. And I expect to see those 210 vacant enrolment places get used up quite quickly once we've got this upgrade complete.
Moriarty, would you like to continue?
So can I go to infrastructure projects, and the member for Carville's line on page 176 will do for the next series of questions for me as well. The $70 million new birth to 6 school in Northern Adelaide, can the Minister provide some details of this project? How large is the school meant to be? How many classes? How many students? Are there any special facilities that are expected?
Thank you, Member for Morialta. And yes, earlier this year I had the pleasure of announcing a new secondary school for the northern suburbs, which will be in the suburb of Ayr. We have secured the piece of land there. $155.3 million was announced in the 24-25 state budget to do that. It's expected to be open in 2028. But we are also currently looking, as the Treasurer has foreshadowed, about whether it might be a PPP. The location is the corner of Andrews and Petherton Roads in Ayr, currently a vacant piece of land. Capacity for 1,300 places for students from Year 7 to Year 12. And we have chosen that quite deliberately and can refer to previous comments that I've made publicly around, I think, spending a bit more time thinking about what the right size of a school might be. Obviously, we went through a period of building what were referred to as super schools, and I think in some cases they were probably bigger than they should have been. And I think the fact that what we've decided upon here being 1,300 places for Year 7 to 12, I hope is taken as indication that we will seriously.
I apologise, Minister. My question was in relation to the new one in this year's budget, the Birth to 6 school, and happy for you to take a moment if you like.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, Member for Morialta, I understand your question. $70 million announced in the most recent budget, planning to commence shortly. We have not yet announced the location, that is still underway. Expected to be open in 2031. It'll be a new preschool and primary school co-located, capacity in the preschool to be 60 places, and capacity in the primary school to be 400 students from reception to year 6. The project budget is $70 million. That's inclusive of land costs. The planning will commence shortly. We had also on this Deloitte engaged to deliver a business case to identify primary schooling, secondary schooling and/or special education options for the area. That business case was completed in late 2023, and the government considered the recommendations resulting in a new preschool and school being announced.
Can I ask, and it's perhaps fortuitous that the Minister started his answer in relation to the secondary school, and expressing concern about super schools, which is a term that I've never intentionally used. I always thought it was a term that journalists used rather than education people. But my understanding of the reason why birth to 12 schools were favoured for a period of time was to reduce transition risks, to increase connectedness and a range of other educational benefits. Is there a particular reason why the government has decided to go with separate secondary and primary schools to serve what ostensibly strikes me as the same growing community, or is it a factor of, as the Minister was starting to talk about, concerns about schools being too large?
I'll pass over to Mr Templey to provide an answer on this one.
Through you, Minister. So there's been no policy decision to move away from birth to 12 schools where the community context and the demand for enrolment space deems that they're appropriate. In the case of the new Northern Suburbs Secondary School in Ayr, when we did the demand analysis compared to existing supply, we had sufficient primary school capacity in that particular part of the northern suburbs. Similarly, whilst we haven't announced the location of the new primary school that's been announced, it will be in a different part of the northern suburbs where, again, the demand forecasting shows that that's the most immediate priority for new capacity in the system.
Okay. So are you able to identify which part of the northern suburbs, if not the specific suburb, which part of the northern suburbs the new primary school is required to be in as a result of the department's analysis of demand?
So the business case that the Minister referred to earlier, which has been the basis upon which the investment decisions made, covered a large geographic span. It was a much greater area considered than, say, the Mount Barker business case, which was more contained. So the region covered stretches all the way from the west, sort of that Riverlea, Virginia area, all the way through, not quite as far as Gawler and some of the new housing developments out there. So when we did that forecasting demand across that large geographic spread, in some cases we saw demand for secondary schools. In some cases, as I mentioned, primary schools, the most immediate demand, but we haven't actually purchased the land for the new primary school at this stage.
Can I ask then, in relation, not in relation to the business case, which I imagine had to go to Cabinet, but in relation to the demand analysis that was conducted by the department, is it possible to release that publicly?
we'll take that on notice and see if we can provide that. I think it has been provided in some cases under freedom of information in the past, I understand, but we'll get advice on that.
Thank you. The estimated completion date of June 2031, I think the Minister may have said it was due to open at the beginning of 2031, and I understand sometimes there can be a lag, but either way, that's 6 years from now. That strikes me as a fairly lengthy runway for a 400-student school. Is there any particular factor that has led us to this 6-year project when I think the substantially larger project of the new secondary school is due to be completed within the next 2.5 years?
I'm advised that the immediate demand, as the business case showed, was for high school places, and that there was enough primary school places to get us through until the opening of the new primary school.
So when is work anticipated to commence on the primary school? And by work I mean shovels in the ground, so take the milestones that you like, but when are we expecting to have architects appointed? When are we expecting to have concept plans and builders doing work?
In terms of shovels in ground, I think estimated at 28, 29.
Do you have a date by when you want to acquire the land?
So the project budget, which is inclusive of land costs, is $70 million, and that commences in 2027, 28. So obviously a bit earlier, but that of course will be dependent on us being able to find the ideal site.
Thank you. In relation to the second dot point on page 176, the 53.9 million over 4 years for 5 schools, Fairview Park, Fraser Park, Oakbank, Tapara and Two Wells. We've heard a bit about Oakbank already. Is the Minister able to clarify the process as to how these schools were chosen and what factors drove these 5 schools? Can I ask, I assume that they were all recommended to Cabinet by the Education Department. Was the recommendation for just these 5 schools, or were there these chosen from a larger menu?
I can confirm all those schools were the priorities of the department.
Does the department have other priorities seeking, that are at the same level of urgency as these 5?
Thank you, Member from Morialta. As you are no doubt aware, as a former Minister for Education yourself, the list of schools that need infrastructure upgrades is long, but these projects to which you refer are the ones that the department recommended as the top priority. But I might just use that opportunity to furnish you with a bit more information around what we're trying to do in this space, because I know you are aware that we have released a 20-year infrastructure plan where we are trying to provide as best we can some kind of certainty to schools that have been waiting for a long time, in many cases for some investment from the state government towards buildings that are in many cases not in great shape. And we've got 900 public sites and 5,700 buildings across those sites, and I think the average age of 44 years is actually probably more like 46 years now, because I've been saying it for at least a couple of years. And the 20-year infrastructure plan is designed to, I guess, lock us in as best we can to lifting up those schools that haven't had the same kind of infrastructure investment that other schools have had, so that as best we can give them some kind of certainty around when we might get to them, but also to guide the decisions that we make over a longer period of time around what is on the priority list. Because I think there has been, in years gone past, certainly a sense from some schools that the decision making is ad hoc and lacks kind of a cohesive kind of structure to it, and that we're just picking at will. So we have tried to put this 20-year infrastructure plan together so that we can lay out exactly in a public way too the work we need to do and where our priorities are, and also what will drive those priorities in terms of not just areas where there is enormous enrolment growth, but also schools that might have very big enrolment capacity available that have been overlooked. Because one of the things that I really think we need to address is those statistics I referred to earlier that shows such a small number of South Australians choosing to send their children to their local school. And that to me says there is a low level of confidence in many cases that the local public school is suitable for them. And I think in some cases I can absolutely see why families have made that decision, because we have a school that is from an infrastructure sense, not in very, very good shape. And then down the road elsewhere, a school that has had infrastructure investment that looks world class, and we are asking families to choose the school that doesn't look as good as the brand new one. And of course, parents are not going to do that 9 times out of 10. So it is also, as part of this 20-year infrastructure plan, making sure that we do more to lift those schools up where there is enrolment capacity available, instead of us taking the easier road, which we've done in the past, of just adding more enrolment capacity onto schools that are already totally full and have a waiting list.
The Minister talks about his 20-year infrastructure plan that he has. Will he publicly release it, including the schools that can therefore have transparency over upgrades they may expect in the coming years?
I think I can say, Member from Morialta, the plan itself is already public, but the list that sits behind it changes constantly, because, as you no doubt remember, things come up where infrastructure falls apart in some cases or is damaged, and that will of course change the position of that school on the priority list quite quickly, and that happens very regularly because of the age of our stock, because the age of our stock is above 44 years per building, and in a lot of cases still using demountables, which were never designed to be used as long as they have. And I can also say the amount of money that we are spending on breakdown maintenance, which has increased a lot because we are patching buildings up that are beyond their useful life. That list is kind of a very fluid list behind it, depending on what happens to our stock, but the plan itself is public.
Member for Black.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. Minister, I want to go in a slightly different direction. Refer to Budget Paper 4, Volume 1, page 182, and the targets, and the fifth dot point under the targets. Can the Minister provide the committee with details on how the department is ensuring primary school students are being taught the basics in literacy and numeracy?
Thank you. So thank you for your very strong advocacy very early in your career in this place on your own schools. It's great to have a teacher with such recent experience in the Parliament. And I've greatly enjoyed the conversations I've had with you already around this particular issue that you're actually asking about today. And of course, it's always topical. There's always topical around the back to basics and fundamentals. And as the Minister for Education, I see often on social media and elsewhere people asking why education systems have moved away from what they see as the fundamental literacy and numeracy work of schools. But our position here is that we have certainly not done that. In fact, I think South Australia in particular has a very good story to tell. And of course, we can go back to the phonics screening check, which was, the trial was done by Susan Close, the Deputy Premier, and then I have acknowledged before the work of the member for Morialta in continuing that rollout, and we have seen excellent results because of those phonics checks. And it is amazing to think that that was 2017, 2018, and there are some jurisdictions still in Australia which are arguing over whether or not there is any benefit in having phonics, but we have certainly backed it in. And of course, that piece of work that led to phonics being introduced was around a kind of survey of sorts of thousands of students in the system to see if they were at the minimum standard, and the data that came back, if I recall, from that time was pretty alarming at the numbers of, I think it was, the test might have been of Year 3 and 4 students, showing a very high number of them not at the minimum levels of proficiency for literacy. And the screening check was put in place, and we saw, immediate results really, which is fantastic. And we have now in South Australia been the first movers in terms of introducing a numeracy check. We will be the first state to do that, although since we have announced that we are doing that, I note that I think New South Wales and Victoria are also introducing a numeracy check as well, but South Australia as of next year will be the first place in Australia, or the first jurisdiction in Australia, to have both a phonics check and a numeracy check. And I have to say, I found it a bit frustrating, to be honest, that we always have a bit of a pushback about whether we need things like phonics checks and numeracy checks, but then when we go and actually do the work in terms of a kind of survey or test of a portion of students at Year 3 and 4, whether it's in their literacy or their numeracy, and the data comes back and shows that it's actually not in good shape, it seems we are sometimes a little bit slow to do the work, I think, in terms of getting a really good, accurate assessment of where our students are at. but we did do it with numeracy as well. And the startling thing was that the numeracy check trial from 2024 involves 7,000 year 3 and 4 students from 95 schools, so it was a really big trial. And the data that came back from memory was almost an exact mirror of the data that came back in phonics from previous years. So we have responded quickly to that, and we'll have the numeracy check introduced in all schools in South Australia from 2026, all public schools. And we'll, as I said, we'll be the first state in the country to have both literacy and numeracy checks for Year 1 students. And this, I think, is important to note in the context of that argument that you referred to in your question, Member for Black, around those who say, you know, we have moved away from explicit teaching, and you know, that couldn't be further from the truth when you look at the fact that we have not only got phonics and kept that, but we are the first to introduce numeracy. I might also add in there too the work we are doing in South Australian schools in terms of positive behaviour for learning is essentially explicit teaching of positive behaviour. It will strike some as incredible that that is something that we have to do, but it is, I think, currently being rolled out in 40 schools, and the benefits that we are seeing of positive behaviour for learning in terms of showing students our expectations around being at school, behaviour in class, relationships they have with their classmates and with their adults, has seen really impressive reductions in the kind of bad behaviour that has otherwise been seen. I mean, I would point to all those things as examples of where we are actually very, very focused on what you might refer to as the basics of literacy and numeracy. And I think it's something that we should be proud of, that South Australia finds itself in a place where the bigger eastern states like Victoria and New South Wales are actually looking to us, not just on these things, but you know, on a number of things, as leading the way and taking their lead from us.
Member for Moriata.
Thank you, sir. I'll return to page 176, just a couple more questions on the expenditure summary. Can I clarify the $10 million, the third dot point talks about $10 million from 25-26 onwards to support existing infrastructure at government schools and preschools. Is this new money? Where does this fall in? I assume is this capital or operational?
It is new investing money into our capital budget.
So does this increase the... sorry, let me ask in a different way then. Is there a current budget for what's described as sustaining the existing infrastructure at government schools and preschools, or is that just a way of describing new money coming into the Education Department?
So Member for Morialta, this is an additional amount of money into the education budget that we have or will be targeting towards the replacement and upgrades of heating, ventilation and cooling systems and toilets. They're the two things that we have identified to prioritise that extra $10 million which is coming into the Education Department budget courtesy of the budget across the next 4 years. I can possibly go through the schools that are getting them if you wish.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Banksia Park School, R6, and this is under on the HVAC, under the heating, ventilation and cooling upgrades. Banksia Park School, R6, East Torrens Primary School, Flagstaff Hill, R7 School, Henley Beach Primary School, Hewitt Primary School, Kilkenny Primary School, Mitcham Girls High School, Underdale High School. That's pretty much the full list, but I know that we are also doing toilet upgrades at Coromandel Valley Primary School, Goodwood Primary School and Renmark West Primary School. And then at Carcultally Area School, we're doing a design and tech upgrade because we had concerns regarding the condition of the main buildings, particularly the design and tech spaces there. We're providing a new design and technology area as part of this $10 million in the first year of that 4 tranches of $10 million.
So can the Minister clarify if the $40 million that's on about 6 lines from the bottom of page 176, is that fully utilised with the list of schools and upgrades that he's just listed? That's the full $40 million worth?
So this is just the first 10 million. That's
Right.
$10 million worth, and then the department will provide its suggestions or its priorities next year for the $10 million, and that will be the process across the 4 years. Whoever is sitting in this seat.
The Minister's said 4 years a couple of times. Is this a 4-year limited program, or is it ongoing funding that's now coming into education going forward?
This stage is 4 years. 4 years.
Thank you. And is the Minister able to... the Minister clarified that the department has chosen these schools presumably based on their urgent needs at the moment. A number of these sorts of programs have traditionally been funded out of the department's res. Some of them have been, sorry, out of the school's res. Some of them have then sought extra support from the department, and that has been provided or not, as the case may have been over the years. The Minister just said next year the department will come up with a new priority list ahead of next year's budget. Can the Minister confirm that this budget line will not be used to fund promises made during elections, for example, and that the department will indeed be given the opportunity to provide a priority list in the immediate lead up to next year's budget for the expenditure of those schools that are seen as highest priority at that time?
My answer to the member for Morialta would be that to this point, I think I've been pretty clear about taking department advice on where all this money has been spent. I think I've made a point of doing that. I can't see into the future, and I can't make decisions for others who may have a say in things either. That would not be fair of me to do that, but I would refer to my track record, I think, including in the schools that are listed in this most recent. I mean, we've got...
I'm interested in your first budget. It was entirely, this line was entirely devoted to meeting election promises, hence my concern, sir.
I think I've given you my answer is that my intention has always been to follow department priorities, and that's kind of the thing that underscores the 20-year infrastructure plan too, because you and I both would remember there are schools that felt that they were constantly overlooked, even though they were, should have been high on the list for political considerations. So, without being able to predict the future or speak for others, my intention remains to use the department's priority list.
Did all of the schools that have received funding under this program this year, under this 10 million, request support for these projects, or were some of them identified through some other departmental analysis as being a priority.
In terms of the schools listed under this program, these were all very much known problems, to put it that way, or known infrastructure issues that were known to the department. It was
Does the department therefore have a list of other schools with very much known problems that it anticipates potentially seeking funding for in the future? And if so, will that be released?
I'll pass over to Mr Templey to provide a bit of...
Yes, so through you, Minister. So through the ongoing engagement we have with schools and preschools, we obviously work to develop an understanding of the condition of things like air conditioning, toilets and that sort of thing. Where either a school or the Ventia business partner identifies that there's an asset that's not performing as it should, they submit what's called an asset performance assessment report, and that gets fed into the department's processes in terms of looking to allocate the funding that's available to the projects that are identified as being most in need.
How many APAs, asset performance assessments?
That's right.
Are currently outstanding and as yet unfunded?
I'd have to take that on notice, to be exact.
Will the Minister release the list of those APAs publicly so that we can have confidence that this budget line won't be used by his colleagues, if not by him, for political purposes during an election cycle?
No, I don't have any plan to do that, and my reason is that the list changes so frequently because of the state of our stock and something unforeseen happening, which unfortunately happens almost on a daily basis. If we have a problem with a roof or whatever it might be, the list then of course changes based on changed needs. So I don't think it would be right for me to release a list and then give an expectation to schools about where they might be, only for that to change.
Well, I guess that gets back to the problem of why we were hoping that this money would be kept in reserve until after the election, but the Minister's unable to do that. I'll move on, sir. Can the Minister provide a budgeted list of expenditure for all projects for each year of the forward estimates, as he has done in the past on notice?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you, sir. In relation to the technical colleges, I'm happy to go to the highlights on page 182 if you'd like, although I'm sure that it could stay on the investing expenditure if it was easier. How many students are now enrolled in the Findon Technical College?
Change. Got to introduce Claire Feschuk, who is the Executive Director responsible for the creation of our technical colleges. In terms of Findon, which of course was our first technical college to open, I can confirm that it is full As of the 5th of May 2025, there are 329 students enrolled, including Year 12s. That's 129 full-time and 200 part-time. And I can probably add, although the member might already have a question in mind on this, I know that the expressions of, I think this is the way that Ms Veschuk has characterised it to me, that expressions of interest for the remaining 4 technical colleges, which of course are the Heights, Tonsley, Mount Gambier and Port Augusta, have exceeded what we originally had for Findon Technical College. So we are confident that they will also be full. It has helped, I must say, with the other 4 to have a open and functioning technical college to actually show people, which was not something that we had with Findon. It was hard for people to envisage what it was we were talking about, given we hadn't built it yet.
Can I ask then, in relation to that enrolment, which I think you said 200 part-time, what are the nature of those enrolments? When you say part-time, are we talking somebody who attends for a day for a short course or a week, or are we talking about students who are students of Findon High School that are potentially just doing one subject and therefore not attending as full-time students?
Pass over to Ms Veschuk to give some comments, and then I'll add some of.
Yep, thank you. Through the Minister, part-time, the students that attend the Tech College part-time attend on a whole range of different attendance patterns. So we've got students attending part-time to participate in the VET programs, so they might attend 1 day a week as part of the VET activity. We've got students attending for week blocks, and we've got students attending for several days over a period of time. So it really depends on what part of the programme the students are attending for. So a full-time industry training programme in a technical college involves curriculum, which is SACE curriculum. It also involves work experience activities and connections with employers. It also involves VET training. So students are attending for a whole range of different different patterns according to the part-time nature of the programme.
The Minister added those up together and got us a figure of 200 part-time along with 129 full-time. Are we able to get a breakdown of the 200? I'm happy for it to be on notice if that's easier.
We can try to do that, but I'd also point out too that the arrangement to which Ms Veschuk refers was put in place on the back of demand in the community. There was a lot of demand in the community to have access to Findon Technical College, but not everybody wanted to move their enrolment from their existing school to Findon. They wanted to stay at their home school, but also access the fantastic facilities at Findon. And I think that model has worked really well, and that is the model that we're also making sure we can use in the regional technical colleges, because we have had specific requests at those regional technical colleges for non-government schools students to be able to use the tech colleges as well. They have, in at least one case, maybe more, written to me to make sure that we can put a model in place where their students can access it. But one other thing that I would add is that the split between full-time and part-time in the first year compared to the second year has changed. So in 2024, 85 full-time and 150 part-time. Of course, there weren't year 12s yet because it was the first year, but then we've gone up to 129 full-time and 200 part-time. And I think what we're starting to see is a bit of a movement towards more taking up those full-time places, but important to still offer a part-time option, so that I guess what we have built, which is a $35 million technical college, is accessible to as many people as possible.
Can I ask, is the 129 full-time students, are they all therefore students of Findon High School's per their enrolment, and the 200 part-time are a mix of students of Findon and other schools? Is that correct?
Yes.
How many students are at Findon High School have enrolments at Findon High School of students that are not part of the technical college remain stable, or have they subsided since the introduction of the technical college? I guess I'm asking, are these 129 students at Findon, are they largely new to Findon, or do they include a significant cohort of those that were already at Findon?
We'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you. In relation to the other 4 schools, the Minister said that globally and each individually, they're on track to be fully enrolled. Is the Minister able to identify, as at whatever the most recent convenient date is, how many expressions of interest each have had?
On this matter, so should be next. Next, no, hold on. Just finish this question first. Waiting for the answer, then you're next. You were going to answer. Do we going to answer? Sorry, did I miss your answer, Minister?
I haven't provided one yet. I'm about to.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's fine. I'm waiting for your answer.
Thank you. I'm informed that in the case of Port Augusta Technical College, the capacity is 200, and last week 212 offers went out, so based on expressions of interest, so that would have it as oversubscribed.
And the other 3, sir?
So in relation to Tonsley, I can say that the target for the first year is 120. We have had registrations of interest of 68, applications of 19 and conditional offers of 37, which has it tracking very well. And the Heights, we have again a target of 120, which was essentially what we aimed for with with Findon in its first year. Registration of interest 44, applications 42, conditional offers 21, confirmed offers 1, and again that would have us on track to meet the target. And I think in both those cases of the Heights and Tonsley, and certainly Port Augusta, all those numbers are significantly stronger than Findon was at that point.
And Mount Gambier, sir? Sorry, it's the same question.
So at Mount Gambier, I might need to take on notice because we're still in the student or school engagement process there. So I will have to come back with something on Mount Gambier. But, you know, as I said, you know, interest in these compared to interest at the same point with Findon is, you know, a long way advanced, and it looks like we're on target at basically all of them to hit our target number for the first year. And certainly at Port Augusta, it looks like the number of conditional offers that have already gone out exceed the capacity of the technical college.
Member for Torrens.
Thank you. Budget line, paper 4, volume 1, page 182. General area. Can the Minister update the committee on outcomes for students in our technical colleges, and including in that the various career pathways into apprenticeships and traineeships and of course university?
Well, thank you, Member for Torrens, for your question. And it was great to have you there yesterday, of course, at the Heights School, as we announced that Boeing are going to be one of the industry partners.
Very exciting.
Very exciting indeed. It was a proud day, and there's a few. I think what I might provide here in response to your question is some actual case studies, which of course we now have, which we didn't have when we were opening Findon, but we can now talk to some real success stories of students who have chosen that pathway. And there's a few here in particular that I would like to read out. One is a student, Ivy, and I had the pleasure of meeting Ivy at the Jobs Expo at the showgrounds, where she was on the Tech College stall speaking to students who were coming in and seeking information about you know, what a career through a tech college might look like. She's currently completing her Cert 3 in Early Childhood Education and Care while she's finishing her Year 12. She completed work experience placement at Good Start Early Learning, and they are one of our partners at Findon, and they'll be a partner with us at the Heights, I think, as well. Ivy was then offered a school-based traineeship with the centre in 2024. Ivy plans to continue her studies after school and pursue a long-term career in early childhood and community care, driven by her passion for nurturing children and giving back to her community. And I think I can also add to that, I had a chance to have a good chat with Ivy at the Jobs Expo and spoke to her about, you know, what was it about Findon Technical College that appealed to her, and she was quite honest and said that school wasn't working for her. She wasn't enjoying it. She was probably at risk of dropping out. She didn't want to be there anymore, and she's now, you know, invigorated, excited, loves going to school to the point that she is now a ambassador for us at public events, where she talks to other young people and tries to convince them about why they might want to consider a future at a technical college. Hannah, while in Year 11, Hannah achieved a merit in her SACE Industry Connections subject. She's now in Year 12 and working part-time at Precious Cargo Early Learning Centre in Lockleys while completing the first year of her university degree at the Technical College, integrated into her final year of school through the Technical College's flexible career focus model. Cooper says he has learnt more at the Tech College than in all of his metalworking classes at his old high school. He says he has gained special insight into the work that SA's defence companies like BAE Systems and Axiom, as these employers partner with the college. This year in Year 12, he is undertaking a school-based machinist apprenticeship as part of his Year 12, working full-time at BAE Systems at Edinburgh Parks and training in a Cert 3 in engineering mechanical trade. He's on his way to a career in defence, and once he has finished his apprenticeship, he has indicated he may go on to a mechanical engineering degree apprenticeship And of course, we have a couple of degree apprenticeships in South Australia. I think we are the only jurisdiction to have them, which will further his trade as well as provide a university education. Just a couple more I might share as well. Patrick, I had the good fortune of meeting Patrick recently. He's a First Nations student studying in the health and social support stream at Findon. He's the first school-based trainee at the Women's and Children's Hospital. He's gaining practical paid experience in areas such as speech therapy, hydrotherapy, hearing screening and casting, and is on his chosen career pathway in paediatric health. And then Emma. Emma was the first student at the Technical College to gain a school-based apprenticeship in 2024, which of course was very early. The Tech College only opened in 2024. This was in engineering, a field typically not seen as attractive for female students, and we know we need to do a lot more to change that perception. She's now in Year 12 and well advanced into her career with Axiom Engineering, of course, who are a partner at Findon and an employer partner at the college. So some good examples, I think, there, Member for Torrens, of even early, I guess in the infancy of our technical college, already of students who've gone through there and are finding work, paid work, and those pathways quite quickly through into not just secure jobs, but jobs that are a real priority for our state.
Thank you.
Member for Morialta.
In relation to the technical colleges, we were discussing before that Findon Technical College, the full-time students are students of Findon High School. I assume at Port Augusta Secondary School will be the public school taking enrolments for the Port Augusta Technical College, notwithstanding that you've made it clear that there'll be some potential for non-government school students to also do courses there. The Heights is obviously connected to the Heights School. Can the Minister clarify which public schools will have the enrolments for Tonsley and Mount Gambier?
So both the country tech colleges are part-time models, which was how they were envisaged to be delivered, so that we could not only offer places to non-government school students, but we've also built accommodation at both those. So I think is it 33 or 44? 44 bed accommodation at both Port Augusta and Mount Gambier, because as we announced at the time, those technical colleges particularly are designed to be for the Limestone Coast area and the Upper Spencer Gulf area, not just for Port Augusta and not just for Mount Gambier. And to be able to accommodate that so that students can travel and stay, which is the reason, of course, that we built accommodation. The two country models need to be part-time models. Tonsley, the school with which it is attached in terms of enrolments, is ASMS, the Science and Maths School.
And Mount Gambier?
Well, it's...
so Mount Gambier and Port Augusta are technically not attached to any public school,
right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
I have a couple of questions I'll get to on the accommodation, but prior to that, I just want to unpack, if we possibly can, the funding arrangements, therefore, for those two technical colleges. My understanding is that the Heights and Tonsley and Findon, under this model, as technically part of those high schools, are funded through an extra allocation to those schools effectively, and that money is eligible for consideration under the Gonski model. Are the Port Augusta and Mount Gambier Technical College students considered public education students and therefore eligible for allocation to funding under the Gonski model as public students?
So for public school students who will be attending the technical colleges, yes, they are eligible for Gonski funding, but we have been in discussions with or Catholic education to a lesser extent, independent schools around what the fee will be for non-government schools to attend. They were supportive of there being a fee. We haven't yet landed on what that will be.
Is the intention of the government that it be a cost recovery sort of fee-for-service model, or are you seeking to do better than that in terms of making a bit of a profit?
No, we'd be looking at cost recovery.
And from that point of view then, is there a budget allocation within the Education Department for staff specifically allocated to the 5 technical colleges? And if so, how much is that budget? How many staff? How many teachers next year, for example?
We'll take it on notice and come back to you.
Thank the Minister. In relation to the accommodation, I think the Minister says earlier that there was 33 and 44. I can't remember which.
44. I meant 44.
Oh, both of them were 44. What is the nature of that accommodation? Are they boarding houses? Are they attached to the school adjacently or separately in the town? Are they run by the school or by some other provider? How is that working?
I'll pass to Ms Veschuk to give a bit of detail on how the accommodation will work.
Thanks. Through the Minister, each of the regional technical colleges has accommodation for 44 overnight students. The accommodation for students is laid out in 11 rooms, so 4 students per room. Each student has a king single bed and their own area, which is private with a privacy curtain. There's a shared shower facility and a toilet facility for each room, the 4 students. Students arrive on a Sunday evening and they leave on a Friday afternoon. So they stay for block weeks. The delivery of the industry training programs at the Regional Technical College is a block week delivery model, specifically to accommodate students from a large regional area that can take advantage of the facilities and the training and come in for the full week.
How many weeks of the year are you anticipating these 44 places being filled?
Depends on the year level on the program and will vary. I'm not sure we can give you an answer on that yet.
Are these set to be open next year?
Port Augusta will be open in 6 weeks. Mount Gambier start of next year.
I assume whoever is managing these services is making some sort of plans for how they are to be staffed, and so I would assume therefore that there is some level of expectation of how often they are to be used. Can I ask who is managing these facilities? Who owns them? Are they government, department, or are you contracting to the private sector?
All government owned and run. And I might just add too, I think this is the first time that we have done or built accommodation in the, you can correct me if I'm wrong, public education system, I think since maybe Lucendale in the 1970s, I think. Could be wrong, I could be wrong, but it's a long, long time since we've built accommodation in the public education system.
So are they owned by the education department? Who are the staff? Which department are the staff?
Department for Education staff.
Are they considered part of the Technical Colleges project, or is this a separate project? I'm particularly thinking in relation of acquittal for Gonski purposes.
I'll hand over to Mr Bernardi to provide an answer on this one.
Thank you, Minister, through the Minister. So costs of employees will be paid for by the department. There would be other costs like cleaning as well, where we contract out. Now, for other schools, we pay for cleaning contracts, and there will be other costs for vet providers. So for public school students, those costs will be paid out of Gonski funding, but as the Minister indicated prior, we'll be also looking to charge on a cost recovery for non-government students that attend the college.
What is the anticipated cost for government school students using the accommodation?
There's no charge for government students.
How many times is it anticipated to fulfil one of these courses that a government student will be using the accommodation?
Yes, will depend on year level, depend on where the student is coming from. There's a lot of variables in terms of what the answer might be.
Does the accommodation provide meals?
Yes.
What's the staffing model for each of these facilities? How many staff are we talking about? Because we're now talking about cooks and cleaners and presumably, cleaners I think is outsourced, but 44 students there. It's larger, as I understand it, than Borough or Lucindale or Cleve, where the department had existing experience with boarding schools. This is a pretty substantial new program. What is the anticipated staffing model and budget?
Take that on notice, but I think worth me just pointing out that if we are to build these brand new technical colleges, not just in metropolitan areas but in regional areas like Mount Gambier and Port Augusta as well, then if it is to be an asset for the Limestone Coast and the Upper Spencer Gulf area, we really need to have accommodation so they can actually access it. Otherwise, we're really only building technical colleges for those towns. So I think in terms of making sure that we can get as many young South Australians who live in those regional areas the opportunity to actually use the facility, I think having the accommodation is vital.
Minister, you said that the Port Augusta one is opening in 6 weeks. Are the staff who are going to be providing supervision to students and meals and managing that service, are they already employed or in place? Or if not, when do they start and how many will there be?
For Torrens.
Five of the FTE, including the lead, are already in place, and the remaining are in progress, but to be there in time for it to commence.
Can I request, though, the aspect in relation to the full profile and the budget be taken on notice if we don't have that here?
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Member for Torrens.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question on the National School Funding Agreement, and as a former teacher, I have a great interest and have done over a number of years in this. So, Minister, are you able to update the committee on the negotiations and the outcomes on the National School Funding Agreement?
Can I have the budget reference, please?
Budget paper for Volume 1, page 182.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Member for Torrens, and it's appropriate that we have been talking a bit this morning around the Heights Technical College, because that was where we gathered earlier this year to sign up to the National School Reform Agreement to finally get public schools in South Australia to 100% of the schooling resourcing standard. That will mean for South Australian schools, public schools alone, over $1.3 billion of additional money invested into public schools across the 10 years of the agreement. As you would know, as other members of this place would know, it was not an easy process, and I want to acknowledge the support that South Australia received, in particular from the Ministers for Education in Victoria, Ben Carroll, and New South Wales, Prue Carr. We stuck together and pushed hard for the federal government to come to the table with the full 5%, which we thought was fair, given that states were already doing the vast majority of funding for public schools, and it wasn't unfair to ask them to chip in the full 5%. And you know, it was a moment, I think, of great pride for all of us to be able to stand there in what is soon to be a brand new technical college, a public technical college, and sign up to that agreement. And of course, we know where that money needs to go. I think one of the pleasing things about what was a very protracted negotiation and a difficult negotiation was the fact that we weren't actually arguing over where the money needed to be spent. I think the federal government and states were largely agreed on that. We were just arguing over who would pay it, and having that extra money now, which will come online, will mean we can do, you know, a lot more of the things that we need to do, and there's lots of those. We are actually meeting this Friday, in fact, as Education Ministers. It's the first time we've had an opportunity to meet post the federal election, and I think we'll all look forward to actually being able to talk about not so much how we actually found our way to agree for the 100% money, but actually start talking about what our priorities are and where that money should go. I think there has been an argument that has been put for many years, you know, generally by the conservative side of politics, that it's not about money, that money's been poured into the system for years and years and we haven't seen results improve. But you know, it's funny, whenever you go to schools and you talk to teachers or you talk to parents, and indeed when you talk to students about what's needed, it's so often more individualised support for them in the classroom, whether it's more teacher availability, more SSOs, more allied health support from outside the classroom, all these kind of things that all actually do take money. And I'm pleased that what we have now is you know, a 10-year agreement actually locked in that gets us that $1.3 billion, so we can do more of that, more support in the classroom, more investment in numeracy and literacy education, investment in our workforce, which, you know, we've already been discussing this morning, issues around, you know, teacher vacancies, you know, more that we can do on well-being, which we've sought to make a focus of this government as well. These are all things that actually weren't a source of disagreement at the National Education Minister's Cabinet table. All states and territories really came with the same list of issues that they needed addressing. The question was how we were able to invest the money to achieve them, and I'm pleased to say that we are now in a position where we will be able to do that.
Moriarty.
Thank you, sir. On the same line that we were pursuing a little earlier, can I ask what the cost of the construction, I assume these were new builds from how they've been described, if they weren't, were they new builds, what was the cost, where are they located, the two boarding houses?
Oh, right, the accommodation?
Yes.
They're inside them. So they're both inside the technical colleges.
That's important for safety.
So they're inside the technical colleges, and I'm guessing, but maybe the Minister could confirm, that the cost was met from within the $35 million per technical college infrastructure build. What was the specific cost of the infrastructure for these accommodation blocks, or is it unable to be segregated?
I'm told we can't break it down because it was part of a complete package at both the Port Augusta and the Mount Gambier technical colleges, but they are co-located, built within the technical colleges, but in I think what you would describe as a secure wing.
What's the age range of the students that will be able to access these facilities?
So it's 10, 11 and 12, and it will be governed by the department's camps and excursions the department's existing camps and excursions policy.
Who is going to be the person on site with responsibility for the accommodation?
The principals of both Port Augusta and Mount Gambier technical colleges will be ultimately responsible.
Actually, that's a useful point. So can I clarify, these two technical colleges, from a governance point of view, are they effectively new public schools with their own principal and staffing structure separate to the existing public schools in those cities?
We'll just make a quick personnel change. Welcome back, Mr. Westwell.
Hi, through you, Minister. The country technical colleges are not schools, and they're added to the school. They're added to the system, so they're a value add in the system. In a similar way to, there are some parallels with something like Arbury Park, which is a government-run facility, and students will go there from their home school to do specific learning. These are the same. So in Mount Gambier, for example, students will go there on this part-time basis, and it's a value add into the system. And it's better to have them on the sites that they are, that students can go and visit rather than attached to a particular school in those instances.
I understand that, Professor. Minister, the thing I'm seeking to clarify is that earlier you said that the principal of the school or the technical college would be the person with the on-site responsibility. there be an issue, and with 44 15 to 19-year-olds on site away from home, I can only imagine that there may be issues at some time, that going back to the Flinders Street camps and excursions, officers won't be a satisfactory immediate response. So is it a person of a principal level of appointment that's going to be responsible for supervising them? And is that person going to be, is there going to be a person of seniority living on site able to provide supervision to these students?
So the answer in terms of your question about the principal is yes. In terms of 24-hour supervision, there will be appropriately qualified staff there to maintain that supervision.
Are there going to be arrangements in relation to gender segregation or curfew arrangements, particularly when we're talking about minors? How late are the students allowed to be out, and are there going to be restrictions on adult students?
I think the answer is yes to both those questions, and that would be as per the existing camps policy that we have.
Thank you. I might move on to a different line in relation to the South Australian curriculum, for which I'm certain there must be a dot point on page 182, in targets, I believe. Can the Minister identify how much funding allocation goes towards this project? I understand that there is a cohort within learning improvement, or whatever curriculum and learning may it be called now, for people looking after this. What is the budget allocation each year for this program? I'm talking about the South Australian Curriculum for Public Education, for clarity.
I'll pass to Martin Westwell.
Through you, Minister. We'll have to take that on notice for the actual figure. But of course, the people that we're talking about, it's not as if they're kind of ring-fenced, the whole group, it's not as if they're ring-fenced to just work on the curriculum, South Australian Curriculum for Public Education. There is a curriculum team who are certainly developing that. But of course, there's also people involved in supporting teacher practice and supporting that use of the curriculum. And we'd be doing that whether it be, if we were just doing Australian curriculum without any modifications, or if we were doing the South Australian curriculum for public education. So there's no kind of additional cost for the South Australian public education curriculum.
I appreciate the point that these are public servants who were there already, but previously they were doing a different job that presumably is no longer being done. My understanding is they were working on resources for teachers to do content, scope and sequence of ways to assist teachers in delivering the Australian curriculum, and now they're doing this project instead. Can I ask how many of those staff there are? And has there been any budget spent on external contractors to assist the project?
Sorry, you're asking how many there are in total, or how many there are that we would otherwise not be employing?
How many are forget what was happening before, how many people are in the team that is working to deliver this project on an ongoing basis?
Okay.
A couple of things I would say, I think, Member for Morialta. I mean, there's a new curriculum, so that would have to be prepared and rolled out regardless, and those staff would be doing that. And just want to reiterate, there's no additional cost, but in terms of the actual numbers of staff in that area, we'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Is the government making available the materials they're developing to non-government schools in South Australia or the non-government schooling sectors, or is it being kept solely for public education? I could ask, have there been any non-government schools that have asked for it?
The short answer is yes. We're still working through it, but it will be made available. And yes, I think it was most likely the sector heads who made that request. And I think we've got a pretty good track record of sharing our work. And that's the intention here as well.
Is the department paying for professional development for teachers or providing other support for teachers to assist them in teaching, getting on top of these 19 dispositions and other features, novel features, if we like, of the South Australian curriculum for public education, as opposed to the more traditional approach to teaching the Australian curriculum?
Professional learning is being provided, and of course we'll be providing professional learning regardless of whether it be the Australian curriculum without any modifications or these modifications that we've made. But we've made these modifications in response to what teachers, students, parents and employers were telling us about our students and what supports them to be successful. So, for example, in mathematics, students can be good at answering tests, but when they get into, some future learning or some future training, or when they get into, a situation where they have to use that maths, what we find is if they've only been good at doing tests, they can be quite fragile. And so one of those dispositions about resilience is really important for students. And as I say, kind of the community has told us that it's not enough for our students just to have the knowledge and skills of mathematics. They have to have this disposition as well. And so it's not like we've added a whole level of new maths content. So we're not saying, now you were teaching this before, and now we're asking you to teach more content. That's not what it is. But what we are asking our teachers to do is to say, well, in something like mathematics, we know how important it is for our young people to develop these dispositions if they're going to be successful in their future learning in their lives. And so we're going to say this is important for all students to develop this level of resilience. And not only that, we're going to support you through professional learning. And one of the things that we've seen when we started to do that and incorporate that into our classrooms is it helps teachers in lots of different ways. So it helps teachers in terms of the differentiation in the classroom. And so if I give you kind of one example around a particular piece of work that a school did, and they were talking about a student with autism in a classroom. And, and when they were doing English, they would normally, focus on the content, and they're still focusing on the content, and they're still focusing on the skills, but they're changing the way in which they're teaching it. And this particular student that I'm thinking of, they started off and they had a core text that they were looking at, and as part of that, they were drawing a picture of a tree. And the student drew a picture of a tree, and it was only just a tree. It was barely recognisable. And the teacher gave the student some feedback about it to help the student to have more of that ability to take on feedback and to respond positively. And so the student redrew his tree, and there's some specific feedback, and redrew that tree. And the teacher's trying to help the student to develop that disposition as a learner. Now, when somebody's visited the school and gone to talk to this student, the students took the visitor by the hand and taken them over to this picture of a tree to say, this is my best tree. And what you're seeing in that is this intention of the development of the disposition coming through in the student and coming through in the pride of the student and their ability to access the curriculum, the knowledge and the skills of the curriculum in a way that's really meaningful for them. And so we're seeing these examples, right across the system. So yeah, we're providing professional learning, but it's not, as I say, it's not like it's more content, it's supporting people in the way that they do their teaching.
I might just add that, if I could too, that a lot of this work behind the dispositions has been led by feedback from industry and employers around what they want to see. We've got a big opportunity, I think, in front of us in South Australia at the moment in terms of big projects. I won't list them. Everyone here knows the ones I would be talking about. And I think if we don't collectively as an education system provide the skills to our young people who are graduating out of our high schools that those employers are going to need, and the one that keeps coming up is resilience, then we're not exactly succeeding or doing our young people justice in terms of making sure they leave school with the skills they need to not just get the jobs that are available, but to be successful in those jobs as well. So this is, I think there's a bit of a suggestion somewhere that this is all simply just led by us in the education department, when in actual fact a lot of work is actually done listening to those who might end up being the employers of our students about what they are seeing that might be lacking from our graduates, and some things that we should focus on more. And I personally think that is the right thing to do. I think I've said this on many occasions. The biggest test of any education system is how it produces, how it gives its graduates the skills that they need for the world that they enter. And the world is changing at a rapid pace, and we need to find a way of changing with it. And I would say the kind of posture that we've taken on artificial intelligence is a very good example of that, where we decided, instead of doing what every other state and territory did at first blush, which was just to ban it, we said, instead of doing that, how about we actually teach young people to use it in a safe and productive way, given that there was going to be something that would needed to be used in the future.
Can I ask one more question? How many chronic truancy referrals has the department received so far this year? How does that compare with previous years? And is the Minister currently considering any prosecutions?
If you would allow us, Member for Morialta, Mr. Westwell's going to add something to the last answer, and then I have an answer for you on your other question.
I just wanted to add, when we talk about dispositions, it's easy to kind of characterise them as you're almost like you're either doing maths or you're doing dispositions. There's a choice here for the either or. But, and that somehow these are kind of not contributing to students' achievement. And what the research shows us is that that's absolutely not true. That the dispositions have a big impact on student dispositions. So if you look at Australia's, and indeed South Australia's, PISA results from the last PISA round that had a focus on mathematics, and you look at how sensitive students' performance is to things like curiosity and perseverance, those are the two factors that students with that curiosity and with that perseverance, if they were a country on their own in PISA, they'd be up there challenging the likes of Singapore. South Australian students who've got this curiosity, who've got this perseverance, and their achievement as a consequence is much higher. And so the dispositions are really important alongside the instruction, the development of knowledge and skills that of course our students need. But what we're finding more and more is that it's just not enough, it's not sufficient. And so it's always got to be a both and never be an either or. And for all the work we've done in Australia around, for example, in the early years around literacy and numeracy, one of the things that the TIMSS data, an international comparison of 4-year-olds and 8-year-olds around the world, so Australian 4-year-olds, the gap in performance in mathematics between male and female students is bigger than almost anywhere in the world. And there was a study that was done in Nature that just came out a couple of weeks ago that shows it's about girls' dispositions towards mathematics. If you don't keep your eye on these dispositions, what you can find is that it drives students' achievement down. And if you do keep your eye on these dispositions, what you find is all the way through from year 4 right up to our 15-year-olds in PISA, you put effort into these dispositions and it drives student achievement up. So it's never an either or, it's always a both and.
And on truancy?
Yes. So happy to give you an update on truancy. And the first point I might
This
just
will be
make
the last answer.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. First point I'd like to make is that we have seen attendance rates go up 2.4% since 2022. Still a long way to go, but positive signs. I think we're actually above the national average now for the first time in a long while, although that is also in part because other states
I guarantee we were
not.
above the national average during the COVID pandemic.
Yes, well, that is
Okay.
probably
There's a lot
true.
Sorry, we haven't finished. Minister, you got some more to add?
But in terms of chronic truancy, I can tell you this. Since coming to government to May of this year, we have reviewed 112 families involving 166 children. Of the 112 cases, 49 cases, which involve 71 children, are currently being closely monitored or are under assessment, investigation, or have been actually referred for legal advice. Of the 63 cases, which involve 95 children, where prosecution will not be pursued at this time, 40 are cases where an improvement in attendance and engagement was seen. I think it shows that if we push it, in some cases are willing to push it all the way through to showing that we are serious about potentially taking the matter all the way through to prosecution, that it does often result in improved attendance. And in the remaining 23, prosecution was not pursued due to a range of factors, including complex family situations or the family moving interstate. Obviously cases in which a prosecution would not have actually changed the behaviour. But we've done a very, very big bit of work here that I've driven myself around making sure that we show we are willing to follow these all the way through to the point of getting the legal advice and prosecution, and I think it's actually yielded, in a lot of cases, some positive results.
Okay. The allotted time having expired, I declare examination of the school education complete.